Okay.
Okay. So Mac has the report, and I didn't want to spam everybody with it, but we're happy to send it individually. So if anyone wants that, you can either reach out to me or Mac, and if you want to review it in detail on your own time, feel free to ask for a copy. Mac, are you able to share your screen and pull it up for me? Or do you have
Bet I
it?
can. I bet I can.
Okay. So so in terms of this was done by a building biology expert who is an expert in these kind of assessments. He also does homes. So once the homes are built, we could, do that if you're interested. So Mac, if you could scroll down, keep scrolling till it gets to those graphs with all the colors. Um, the reason this matters, keep going, is health reasons. So um, there's been a huge acceleration in the technology over the last 20 or 30 years. So
This,
there, you can stop there. So where, it's just sped up, and there's more and more 3G and then 4G and then 5G, and now they're talking about up to 10G. And so there's all this acceleration of the technology without a lot of understanding of how it affects our bodies. And as that has developed, more and more people are having questions about that or issues with that. And there's now a little bit more awareness that potentially, at least for vulnerable people, children particularly that are developing neurologically, people with already that have some chronic illness, or really anyone who just wants to protect their health, they're looking at this more like just another pollutant that we have to address, right? Similar to filtering our air or our water, or kind of minimizing those risks. It's part of people are looking at how can I filter exposure to this? How can I maybe sleep where I'm not getting inundated with these frequencies all night long, or, different. How can I live away from a tower? Things like that. So on these colored graphs, the different colors are different biologic effects that different studies have shown. And there's two or three, maybe 4 pages of this, so you can see the numbers that we measured on the property. We were using the meter square. On these graphs, they're using centimeter square. So you have to add 1,000 to the number. But basically, what these graphs are showing is that at numbers like from 5 to 30 microwatts per meter square, you have biologic effects. Sleep is affected, heart rate, cardiovascular conditions, neurologic. You get issues with concentration and learning difficulties, things like that. So it kind of gives you a sense of why people care about this, and the different levels that matter. So I just wanted to point out that that's in there if you want to look at that more closely. Now, if you want to go back up, Mac, to the, yeah, right. Actually, one more to the P2. Okay, so that's where we measured. We took some measurements of the tower is off to the right, and it's kind of hard because it's 2D and the tower's way off, but it's close enough that it's concerning, because you don't really want to be closer than a half mile, and it's about a quarter mile away. Um, but it has a vertical topography. Is up on a hill versus just a quarter mile right on the ground. And that does help a little bit, I think, for some of the homes that are tucked closer in, actually closer to the tower, but they're tucked against the hill. So the plume of the tower goes over the homes a little bit more. And definitely the homes closer to the road have a little more exposure than the ones closer to the tower, interestingly, because of that topography. So we looked at those sites, and then Mac, if you can scroll a couple more down, and then we also looked at P1. and did some measurements out here, and just to better understand everything. And then we had kind of a better understanding of what we're dealing with. So there was some good news and there was some not so good news. So the bad news I'll do first, is that what's happened is there was a tower put there, and then there was another tower, and then there was another antenna, like another kind of plate. There's different, like these big, they kind of can point different directions, but they're big plates on the towers. And then, so there's a couple of those on each tower. And so what I think as a group, we need to understand is once a tower is placed, it tends to grow and grow and grow and grow. And that's what we've seen over the last 10 years or whenever this happened. It wasn't always 2 towers with 4 panels or whatever. It used to be just 1 tower. And so you can expect that even if this isn't of concern to you now, or you're not having any issues now, it may be 5 towers 10 years from now. It may be, 20 panels. So I think we have to understand that location, once is selected, is going to grow. So I want you to keep that in mind when you're thinking about decisions about how to protect yourself from this. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's the kind of one of the issues. It's very close, and there's going to be more and more towers there, or more and more plates. The range of broadcasting frequencies was, all of them were present. So 3G, 4G, 5G, and broadband are all coming off that tower. So that's also kind of a negative thing. It's not just one frequency you have to deal with. You're kind of getting hit with all of them, and a lot more 5G than the others. That's the predominant frequency, is 5G and broadband, which are considered the worst because they have the deeper penetration through buildings and through the body. And they're just kind of more disruptive biologically. And in terms of the P1 homes, the P1 homes that have a direct line of sight to the tower, if you can see the tower from your home, then you have very high levels of exposure from that tower. So that was determined. And then because we understood, that's a concept that's important to understand here, that's presented in the report, is that line of sight really matters. If you can't see the tower from your home because it's blocked by trees or other buildings, then you're probably not getting a lot of the exposure. So that's really great. If you can see it, then you are getting the exposure. And so why that matters to P2 is because the way P1 has that north side and west side, the west side is very protected from the tower because the houses line up behind each other. So it's only the front houses that are really getting that exposure, where the way we're designing P2 in kind of that half moon circle, all of the houses will have a lot of exposure from the tower. Possibly the one on the end, kind of tucked in the woods, might not, but depends on if we cut down trees or not there. So that's important. That's kind of the bad news, is that just the way the design, the layout of the neighborhood is for P2, all of the houses are going to get significant exposure from that tower, and we can't block each other, similar to the west side. The west side in P1, Lynn and Barry's house on the far end, like all the way back, that has really low exposure for the Wi-Fi. It's almost as if it's shielded. I mean, we didn't go inside, but just testing in the front of that house, it's almost like there isn't a tower anywhere nearby. It's so protected. So a lot of the homes in P1, because of the mature landscape and other buildings, they actually, some of the good news is that a lot of those P1 homes are not getting a huge amount of exposure from the tower if they can't see it. So that was really good news. And it's just something important to know. So if we have a member that comes and really wants to join our community, but they have EMF sensitivity or they have concerns, it may be that they wait for a P1 home to open up. Now, that changes if the P1 home can see the tower, or if on the west side, the houses are closer together and people are blasting their Wi-Fi. And on the west side, the Wi-Fi people are using are penetrating the neighbors' houses. So you're exposing your neighbor if you're using your own Wi-Fi. Where in the north side, the distance between the houses are more, and that's mitigated some just from the distance. It's maybe reaching a little bit, but not as much overlap in the Wi-Fi between the homes. So that's the bad news, is that there's just a lot of exposure. The P2 houses are the way they're formatted, they're all going to be exposed to that tower, and that the tower is should be assumed that it'll continue to grow over time. The good news is that what I already said, many of the P1 homes are shielded already just from the topography. Another thing, really great thing about P1 is the smart meters are clustered away from the homes. They're kind of together in groups, and that's wonderful. So they're not they're away from your bodies, basically. And then another good thing is the metal roofs that we've chosen for other reasons, fire and other aesthetics, is actually a really good shield. So the metal roof shields the negative exposure from the tower. And what we determined, which is kind of random, and I don't know that we can create it because we don't know what they used, but the stucco in the P1 homes had some kind of metal in the concrete. And so it actually serves as a natural shield already, like from inside the home, it's mitigating some of that. Even the homes in line of sight, we didn't go in any homes to measure inside, but if you have a P1 home that has line of sight to the tower, it would be worth measuring inside to see how much the stucco is mitigating. So not all stucco does that. That's actually not very common. So Ryan was saying that's pretty unusual. And so it was something that we were excited about, that there's some natural shielding for those homes. Just because of the material. And then the windows, these, high efficient windows have that E-film on them or something. They're built with some kind of energy efficiency, and that actually acts as a shield too. So the windows and roofs, even on P2, will create some shielding, which is really nice. In terms of the last really good opportunity for shielding is the fact that we're doing a stucco build. So because when they build stucco, they have to create it's like a chicken wire frame almost. They frame it out and then they put chicken wire around it, so the stucco has something to grab onto. Well, there is a material, it kind of looks like a window screen, that you put in your windows, kind of a metal, flexible, really tight knit grid, and it comes in rolls, and you could roll it out and you could put it on the chicken wire frame before you put the stucco in, probably underneath like behind the chicken wire frame, and then put the stucco cement on. And if you were to do that exterior shielding, you would not have to worry about anything else. Your whole house would be shielded from the tower exposure. So it wouldn't matter if they added 10 more panels. It wouldn't matter if your neighbor was using Wi-Fi and you didn't want Wi-Fi in your home. Like, all of that would be a non-issue if we were able to shield exteriorly. If you don't shield exteriorly, then it becomes more of like, the people that care about it will have to do like a sleep sanctuary, where they turn one room that they sleep in into an EMF free zone, basically, so they can heal or detox or sleep peacefully. And that's much more involved. It's still a good opportunity when you're building to do this, because you can put a layer under the floor before the floor is laid and stuff like that. It's much easier to do it when you're building than it is to tear things up and do it after the build. But it's still much more involved, and it's only one room. Where if you shield the whole house, you don't have to do anything internally. So because the windows are already blocking it, the roof is blocking it, And then if we added that layer around the stucco, you'd essentially have a super safe, low EMF home for a pretty low cost. I priced that out just if people were interested. I priced it for the Ponderosa, which is the biggest home with a 2-story. And at most, and I sort of rounded up on every measurement and, kind of was very liberal with that. So at most, I would be about $2,000 in materials. Now for the smaller houses, it would be less, and it may be less than 2,000 because I rounded up on the measurements, but I don't think it would be more than 2,000 in materials. And then whatever labor, whatever they charge to essentially roll out a material as they're building before they apply the stucco. So that is sort of the kind of short version, the bad news, the good news, that there's a way to mitigate if people care about this and don't want to be getting all of that tower. There's a beautiful, easy way to do it with the stucco builds. But I know Mac had said, we didn't want we can't really do it for one and not or do for 2 houses and not the other 8 or whatever. And so so it would be a community decision if everyone either wanted it or didn't want it. So I wanted to present that as, and let you know that that's out there and probably a decision we'll have to make at some point. And in terms of the report, it goes into more details on the numbers, but essentially, for people in this field, the doctors that consult with these patients and with this, with the building biologists, they recommend the number should be 10 microwatts per meter square, and anything over, in my opinion, I shouldn't just say my opinion. I've had a lot of, I'm a physician and have had experience working with people with EMF sickness and chronic illness and mitigation. And my experience is once it gets in the 100 range to 1,000, people can start having effects, even if they're not aware of it. Maybe they don't sleep as deeply or their heart rate's a little higher, things like that. Biologic effects start happening. Over 1,000 is considered severe and extreme. And you'd want to mitigate that. You wouldn't want to just hang out in that level all the time. So in terms of our numbers, Mac, I don't know if you want to maybe scroll back just one. Yeah. So, so if you can see our numbers, the stations is kind of, we just labeled 1, 2, 3. But essentially most of the numbers are over in the hundreds and sometimes in the thousands, couple thousand range. And then on the road, wide open road straight, you can see the tower. There's no trees or anything. You're in the 7,000 and 8,000. So the numbers are quite high, with the exception of one of the lots that was sort of tucked in the trees, like I said, and then the lots closer to the tower were more in the hundreds versus thousands. If you go 2 down, Mac, where you were, and then one more, that's the P1 numbers. So again, you're looking at thousands for the most part. The one in the square at the bottom, it's looking at the Wi-Fi in the common house. It hangs out over, I think it's over that the grill, or over on the patio. And so he basically was just measuring right next to it, 10 feet away, 25 feet away, just to give you kind of a sense, a comparison. But that, so those were very high numbers. So if you have sensitivity and you're sitting outside, it's a good idea to stay away from that corner of the patio and maybe sit at one of the tables farther away. But it can go, it just shows that it can go as high as tens of thousands. But the standard that we're seeing in the community is, I'd say, 500 to 2,000 is the range, sometimes with a 6,000 or 8,000 here and there on the roads. So the only other thing to talk about is the broadband. That is a little different than Wi-Fi. It's a very concentrated band of energy. It's almost like, in Star Wars, like the laser swords and stuff. It's that kind of energy. And it's intense and it definitely penetrates the body. The way P1 has it right now are they have little satellite receivers on every house facing the path, and they hang next to the doors. And that's kind of like the worst way to do it. It could potentially cause a lot of harm, and it doesn't give any better reception. So it basically means the beams are kind of flooding the pathway, and they're right at eye level. So when you're walking in the house, in and out, you're getting hit with those beams and any scattering of those beams. So ideally, if we do broadband in P2, you want those on the roof, or you want the satellite off, like by itself, in the field or something. Like, it doesn't matter reception wise where it is, but you're going to get a lot less of that exposure if it's not right in your face like that. So that was another thing that kind of came to light when we were looking around. And then I really think as a community, we should have these homes wired for Ethernet. I think this is going to become more of an issue, kind of like global warming. You can pretty much guarantee it's going to get hotter. Well, the way this technology is accelerating and more chronic illness is plaguing our nation, you can almost guarantee this is going to become more of an issue. And so I think being able at the very least to wire the homes with Ethernet, so that if someone can't use Wi-Fi, they can still work from home and do what they need to do online, I think would be really smart investment. I think that's all I got. Does anyone have questions?
Let me just comment on one thing you said, Shelley. We're not sure what we're going to do with this whole topic. I don't know that every house would have to get, the wire mesh, or no houses. I don't know if it's all or nothing. I'm not sure about that. I mean, the SRT is going to have hundreds of decisions that they're going to have to make, and eventually boil down to, these are all the things that are standard in the house, and here's some things that you're going to have some choices about.
Yeah.
And that might be a thing that people have a choice about, because this is a very, less than fully agreed upon topic.
Right,
there's
sure.
there's a lot of people that think that this is solid science and it's a real threat, it's a real danger. And there's a lot of people that think that the science is very weak on it and it's not a real threat. And I mean, most people don't bother turning off their Wi-Fi at night. They
Right.
just leave their Wi-Fi going all the time. So we want to be very sensitive to this as we're, developing guidelines, for the phase 2 construction, the spec document. But we don't want to add a bunch of cost to the houses if, some people don't care about this and other people do. We want to try to balance that. So we've got a lot of stuff to figure out with this, with regard to this. But this initiative that Shelley has taken, because she's the one that really drove this thing, which is great. I just want to really recognize you and appreciate you for doing that, Shelley, because there are people, that want to know this stuff, and this is good information. So I'm glad we have this. Now we can, work more intelligently with it.
Yeah, and I thank you, Mac, for letting this go forward and financing the assessment, paying for that. I really appreciate that, and I think it does. I think it's it's always better to have more information, in my opinion. And even if you don't want to act on it or decide not to do anything with it, and I think it makes us it just makes us look proactive and progressive, and it also really aligns with our healthy living kind of mission, and living in nature and living with as healthy lives as possible and building healthy homes. And I think there are enough people, not, it's never a majority, but there's a significant minority that considers this part of creating a healthy home. So I'm excited that we did it. I think the report's very valuable. And then, if any new people come in and want that information, now we have it instead of just going, we don't really know, it's nice to be able to say, yes, we did an assessment. Here it is. Here's what we are offering. Once we make those decisions, we're going to do Ethernet, or, you can pay $3,000 and have your house shielded, or whatever we decide to offer. I think that's a much better position from our side to a potential buyer than what we had before. So I think it's good.
Yeah, great. Any questions? All right, well, thank you so much, Shelley. Now we'll move into a meeting critique, and this will be for everything, both the finances part and the EMF part. So the meeting critique, as per usual, what went well, what could we do differently to make these meetings more valuable? So the floor is open. Well, I'll start. I went well. It's great to have Noah here for the first time, and Natalia for one of the first times, and just to see, all you folks. And then again, I'll say thank you to Shelley for handling the EMF part and getting that study done and doing the presentation. So thank you very much.
Well, y'all did a great job. Thank you so much. It's not quite as muddy as it was when we first started. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Noah?
Yeah, I don't have any questions right now. It's just a lot of information to absorb, but I definitely appreciate getting an overview of how finances are approached and the thinking and the systems that are in place. It's super useful information.
Great. Good. David?
Oh, you're muted.
It's especially valuable that these have been recorded and will be available, because this is a small sample of P38, and obviously it's relevant to both segments are relevant to everybody, of more interest to some people, but relevant anyway. And so I'm very glad that, and there's always more to learn replaying things. I mean, like the budget thing is really complicated, and even though we've sat through one of these series of meetings last year, it's still, and as you point out, it's changed to some extent. Anyway, very, very valuable to have them recorded and available.
Good.
And I do want to add, just for if somebody's watching this later, I'm super happy to go over the report or answer any questions or discuss anything. And, I told Mac I'm happy to be the point person for any new people that have an interest in this as well. And just to explain kind of, all the nuance, and it gets a little techie, that report. So it's good to kind of, if you have an interest, to talk it through with somebody, but happy to be available for that.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Is the report ultimately going to get sent out?
We talked about that, and I don't know that we made a decision. I didn't want to send it to everybody if there wasn't any interest, but so I thought I'd just send to people who requested it. But I'm open. If you guys think it would be better just to send it to everybody, I'm happy to do that. I just didn't want to spam people, if they didn't want it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see it, but I defer to residents on that question.
Yeah, I'd encourage you to just go ahead and send it out on Heartwood 38, and it's just one
Okay.
email, and it's with an attachment, and people can either click on it or not.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to do that. Sure.
And maybe it should be posted on the website as well, since people come along and new people come along periodically.
Yeah.
I probably am just going to I think I'm just gonna write a summary or something on the website and then let people contact me for the report, you know, if they're really interested. So, because it's a lot to post on the website and there's so much, it's kind of information overload, you know?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, and we do have a little section right now in the phase 2 frequently asked questions that was done, that was written before this, was just basically saying, you know, we're not sure, there's some cell towers and you might want to, you know, look into it. But now we can say, you know, and I think Shelley's going to draft this, yeah, you know, this is what we know, just a little summary, and we could easily put a clickable link there. People can click on it and get the PDF or not. You know, again, it's you know, user preference, but then it's available and I don't care if, you know, who sees the report, everybody can look at the information and make their mind up as they will.
yeah, okay. Sounds good.
And I mean, the whole PDF wouldn't show up when somebody goes to that page. It's just a link, and then they click on it, and then it shows up for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Okay. Any other went well, do differently?
Good job, Mac.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, and thank you so much, everybody, for, you know, carving out time on a Saturday morning to talk about HOA finances.
You got the dedication.
Yeah, appreciate that. All righty, and looking forward to seeing you, Will, and everybody else that's coming for the Oktoberfest here in a couple weeks.
I'm so excited.
I was out
Oh, it's gonna be
scoping
awesome.
out apple trees yesterday. It's not a bumper year for apples, but I think we'll have enough to make some cider.
Yeah, it'll be fun regardless, just to see everybody.
Yeah, it'll be great. Okay, well, I guess that's it then. So we'll just all wave goodbye and end this meeting and everybody get off to their Saturday. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thanks, Mac.
So
Thanks,
much.
everybody.
Yep.
Bye.